Okay, welcome to the deep dive. We've got this stack of sources here, excerpts from a book called Darkness Everlasting, and they are, well, just fascinatingly dark. Our mission today is basically to unpack all this material. We want to pull out the really crucial bits of knowledge, and get a solid understanding of the hidden world it describes. Get ready, because there are some genuinely surprising facts and the characters, way more complex than they seem at first glance.
That's absolutely right. These sources, they just plunge us straight into this reality where demons, powerful supernatural beings, are living right alongside us. But they're hidden, in plain sight, often. They've got their own societies, really intricate ones with hierarchies, rules, their own conflicts simmering away. It's really a chance to get into the weeds, understand the kind of internal logic of the supernatural realm.
Yeah, exactly. And this deep dive, it's custom tailored just for you, the listener. Think of us as your guides through these pages. We'll highlight what's most important, what jumps out as surprising, and hopefully, help you have that aha moment where things click. So let's jump right in. Let's set the scene first. What kind of this is the term they use, right, for these demons, what kinds are we mainly dealing with here, and where do they operate?
Okay, so the sources really zero in on three main types: vampires, werewolves, and interestingly, gargoyles. And they show us a few key locations too, places that are like homes for these beings, definitely hidden from human eyes. First, there's the Viper Pit. It's this very exclusive, hidden nightclub in Chicago, run by a vampire named Viper, clearly a spot for the supernatural elite.
Okay, right. Swanky Demon Club, got it.
Pretty much. Then there are Styx's lairs. He has this temporary estate north of the city, quite isolated. But his true lair, as the sources call it, is different. It's this farmhouse south of the city, but it has these extensive caves underneath. It sounds pretty serious.
Huh, caves. Interesting. And the werewolf leader.
Salvatore, yeah, the werewolf king. He's got his base in Chicago, too, but it's described as a bit less glamorous, more like a warehouse. These places aren't just background, though. They feel like extensions of the characters themselves and maybe their species, too.
That makes sense. Okay, so who are the absolute central figures we should be tracking as we go through this? The ones really driving the story in these sources?
Well, we mainly follow three key individuals. First up is Styx. He's a vampire, and he's just been elevated to Anaso, which is like the leader of all vampires. Big job.
Yeah.
He has this reputation for being ruthless, really fierce. But the sources definitely give us glimpses, well, hints of something more complex going on with him.
Okay, the top vampire. And then you mentioned Salvatore.
Yes, Salvatore. He's described as a pure-blood werewolf, and he's the king of the wares, and he seems completely consumed by one thing: finding someone specific. It's like this 30-year quest that drives his every move.
30 years is a long time.
Okay.
And the third.
And the third is the real curveball, Darcy Smith. At first glance, you think, okay, human bartender in Chicago, seems normal enough, but wow, she quickly becomes the absolute catalyst for so much of what happens in these pages. She really throws a wrench in the works.
Right, which brings us straight to Darcy. Because, yeah, from the moment she shows up, it's crystal clear she's not just a regular bartender.
Oh, definitely not. Styx basically kidnaps her. He frames it as keeping her as a guest, but let's be honest, she's a captive. But what's really striking isn't just her situation, it's how she reacts. Instead of, cowering or falling apart, she shows this defiance. There's this, steel resolve under the surface. She even tries to keep up this professional bartender thing. The sources say she actually asks Styx if he wants a drink.
Get out. Seriously,
Hey.
facing down the leader of all vampires, and she's offering cocktails. That's something else. And that's where we get those first big clues that she's not normal, right? The healing cuts, bruises just gone in hours. And the fact that she literally stopped aging, physically stopped at puberty. She apparently explains it away as being a certifiable freak based on, bad experiences in foster care.
Yeah, and from Styx's point of view, this is just completely baffling. The sources really emphasize his confusion. She smells human, she acts human for the most part. She's a vegetarian, which for a vampire obsessed with blood is just nonsensical.
He can't wrap his head around that.
No. But then there are these undeniable supernatural traits: the healing, the not aging, and his own power, his core vampire ability to sense blood, to understand it. It tells him absolutely nothing about what she is. He's stumped.
Wow, that's just, the irony is incredible, isn't it? The ultimate blood expert can't figure out the blood of the woman right under his nose. What does that even suggest about her? That she just defies classification.
It really suggests her nature is either totally unprecedented, something brand new, or maybe it comes from a source completely outside his experience, his world's known categories. It flags her immediately as uniquely important or uniquely problematic, depending on your perspective.
Okay. And speaking of unique individuals focusing on Darcy,
Hmm.
while Styx is scratching his head, someone else is laser-focused on finding her. That's Salvatore, right? The werewolf king.
Exactly. The sources quickly lay out the werewolf hierarchy for us. You've got the purebloods. These are werewolves born that way. They're faster, stronger, smarter, and, this is key, they can control when they change. They're the elite.
Right, and the others.
Then you have the curs. These are the ones who were bitten, turned into werewolves. They're generally less skilled, have less control over the change, often struggle more with the animalistic side. Characters like Hess and Jade, who are mentioned, seem to fall into this category.
Okay, purebloods versus curs. And the Salvatore's obsession with Darcy. Why is he so driven? The sources make it sound like his life's work.
It absolutely is. They spell it out.
Yeah.
He's been searching for Darcy specifically for 30 years. 30 years.
That's incredible dedication or obsession.
Right. And he wants her so badly that he's willing to risk serious conflict, tracking her all the way to Chicago, potentially starting trouble with the vampires there.
So why? What's the motivation behind this epic search? Is it just power?
Well, the sources hint it's much deeper than that. It connects to some really fundamental problems the rare races facing. He talks about their difficulties, specifically mentioning a high rate of miscarriages. They seem to be struggling to reproduce successfully.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, they need a fertile consort, a queen, someone who can secure the pack's future. And later on, Salvatore actually tells Darcy directly. He believes she is the key. He thinks she's the one who can solve this fertility crisis for them, saying she'll become fertile soon.
Whoa. Okay, so this isn't just political maneuvering or wanting territory. This is about the literal survival of his people, their future lineage.
That seems to be exactly it. It adds this layer of, biological urgency under all the supernatural politics. Even these incredibly powerful leaders, kings and Anassos, they're still subject to these fundamental biological pressures. It makes Salvatore's quest feel incredibly high stakes, not just for him, but for his entire species.
Okay, so Darcy is Styx's guest. Salvatore is desperately hunting her. Understandably, she wants out.
Hmm.
Let's talk about her time being held. And more importantly, her escape plan.
Right. So even though Styx puts her up in, luxurious surroundings, she's not fooled. She knows she's a prisoner. She's clearly uncomfortable, wants her old life back, wants to go home. And during this time, we meet a couple of other interesting characters who interact with her. They give us a bit more texture to this world.
Yeah, like Levitt, the gargoyle. I've had him pretty memorable. The sources describe him as small, kind of quirky. Styx sends him to get Darcy's stuff. They specifically mention her plants and clothes.
Yeah, he's the sort of grumpy messenger figure. But through him, we see these little hints of Styx maybe not being purely monstrous, like sending Levitt out into the cold just to get her plants. It shows a flicker of something else in Styx.
A little consideration, maybe.
Yeah.
And who else does she meet?
She also interacts with Shay. Now, Shay is Viper's mate, the vampire who runs the nightclub. And Shay is half demon herself. She visits Darcy, seems genuinely curious about her, and actually quite supportive. She gives Darcy some insights into Styx and the whole vampire scene. It's like a rare moment of connection for Darcy while she's isolated.
But friendship isn't enough. She wants freedom, and she comes up with a plan. The sources are pretty specific about her escape strategy, right?
Very. She knows she likely only has one chance, so she has to make it count. Her plan involves setting afire, a big distraction, and then using these tunnels that apparently run beneath Styx's estate. It's pretty smart, actually, tactical.
It shows she's not just passively waiting. She's resourceful.
Definitely resilient. And this escape attempt leads directly into another tense situation. After she gets out, she somehow ends up at Salvatore's warehouse lair.
Oh, right into the wolf's den, sorta.
Exactly. And there, she encounters one of Salvatore's curs. Hess, I think. He seems aggressive, maybe sent to attack her, or maybe it's part of some convoluted rescue plot Salvatore cooked up to get her on his side. It's ambiguous.
How does Darcy handle facing a werewolf?
This is another surprise. She actually defends herself, grabs a pipe, fights back, and the sources mention she's shocked by her own strength, her ability to actually hold her own against a werewolf, even if it is just a cur.
Another clue about her hidden nature, her potential power. And speaking of shocking, Darcy's escape, her actions, they trigger something huge in Styx, don't they?
Oh, absolutely. His reaction is described as extreme, like a black rage, but also intense fear. The thought of losing her terrifies him. And this is all happening while he's already weakened. He got injured fighting some wares earlier, took an arrow wound.
So he's vulnerable.
Very. He desperately needs blood to heal properly. And the sources make a point of explaining the difference. Fresh blood from a living source is way more potent for healing than the stored, bottled stuff vampires might use otherwise.
Okay, setting the stage perfectly for this incredibly charged moment. Darcy offers him her blood.
Yes. And what's fascinating is her internal conflict. She's terrified, naturally.
Of course.
But the source material describes this deep, dark longing she feels simultaneously, like a pull towards the potential pleasure of the bite, even amidst the fear.
Whoa, that's complicated.
Very. And Styx, even though he's desperate, he resists at first. He knows how potent her blood might be, how dangerous the temptation she represents is for him, especially in his weakened state.
But he needs it.
He does. And she provides it. The healing effect is described as incredibly rapid, almost instantaneous.
And the consequence is not just healing, is it?
No, this is the monumental part. In that moment, drawing that healing blood, Styx mates with Darcy.
Mates with her. What does that even mean in vampire terms?
The sources explain it's not casual, it's a rare sacred ceremony. It creates an eternal bond binding two lives together forever. It's a huge, profound commitment.
Wow. Okay. Eternal. Sacred. That's intense.
Yeah.
What does it mean that Styx does this, binds himself eternally to someone whose species he doesn't even understand? That seems incredibly risky.
It does, and Viper's reaction really drives that home. Remember Viper, the nightclub owner?
Yeah.
She's shocked, deeply concerned. The sources say she basically calls Styx mad for mating someone whose nature is a complete mystery, especially given the possibility she could be considering the whole ancient vampire-werewolf feud.
Right, that adds another layer of what were you thinking?
Exactly. It just underscores the massive risk Styx took, seemingly driven by this incredibly intense, maybe uncontrollable connection he feels to Darcy.
So now Styx is mated eternally to Darcy. She still doesn't know her origins. And Salvatore is still out there wanting her. This is when Salvatore finally makes his move directly, right?
Yeah.
And drops the truth bomb.
Right. He uses that cell phone he gave her, which, might have been bugged or tracked all along, another layer to his planning, perhaps.
So you can't.
He reaches her while she's basically recovering at the warehouse after the escape and the bite, and he just lays it all out, tells her, "You're the daughter of a pure-blood werewolf. Her name was Sophia. And not only that, you have 3 sisters.
3 sisters. After believing she was completely alone her whole life. That's huge.
Mind-blowing for her. And he also tells her they weren't abandoned, which must have been her assumption for 30 years. No, he claims they were stolen. As babies, possibly sold on some kind of supernatural black market.
Oh my God, how does she even react to that? Discovering a family, a species, a potentially criminal past all at once?
Understandably, it's overwhelming. Total disbelief at first, then shock. Imagine spending your whole life thinking you're utterly alone, maybe even a freak, and suddenly, boom, a mother, 3 sisters, a whole heritage. And the implication that she herself might be a werewolf, even though she's never shown any signs, never shifted, it's almost too much to process.
Yeah, I can't even imagine. And Salvatore, he doesn't just leave it at the family reunion info dump, does he?
No, he immediately pivots, almost in the same breath as revealing her entire past. He proposes she become his consort, his queen.
Back to his agenda. Why her specifically? Again, he must know she's just learned she's potentially were.
It all comes back to that fertility issue we talked about. He explicitly states he needs her, specifically her fertility, for the future of the pack. He even says she'll become fertile soon. It really reinforces that his 30-year search wasn't just about finding a long-lost relative. It was strategic, about securing his species' future through her potential.
And Darcy's response to being told she's werewolf royalty and needs to marry the king.
The sources are very clear on this. She refuses. Flat out, immediate, unequivocal no.
Good for her. Okay, so Salvatore has made his claim. Styx has literally bonded himself to her. A clash between these 2 alpha leaders feels inevitable. And then Darcy actually meets her mother.
It does. The confrontation happens. It's described as pretty dramatic. Styx versus Salvatore. Both incredibly powerful leaders, both laying claim to Darcy. Styx is absolutely furious, ready to kill Salvatore right there.
But Darcy stops him.
She does. She steps in. And what's really interesting is why she intervenes. She basically tells Salvatore to back off, saying he can't hurt her as long as she has Styx to protect her.
Wow, that's a huge statement. She's actively choosing Styx's protection, acknowledging that bond, even using it against the werewolf king.
It's a massive shift, right, from captive to, well, something much more complicated, relying on the vampire who took her in the first place.
Definitely. And then the meeting with Sophia,
Right.
her actual biological mother. What's that encounter like?
Sophia is described as, a pure-blood werewolf. Beautiful, confident, self-possessed. She confirms everything Salvatore said. Darcy's heritage, the story about the stolen babies, and her reason for stealing them. It aligns with Salvatore's hints. She claims it was necessary for the pack's protection, their future, tied directly to those fertility problems they have.
She admits she stole her own children for the pack. How does Darcy take that?
Sophia asks for forgiveness, wants Darcy to come home with her, join the pack, help find the lost sisters, but Darcy's reaction is complex. She refuses to just go with Sophia immediately.
I can see why.
Yeah, the idea that her mother prioritized the pack's needs over her own children, to the point of stealing them, that's a huge hurdle for Darcy to accept. However, and this is significant, she does choose to make peace with Sophia, at least on the surface, and she expresses a real desire to know her sisters if they can be found. So she's not fully rejecting this new family, but she's asserting her own terms, her own choices, not just falling into the role they want for her.
Okay, she's navigating this incredible mess with surprising strength. So after all that drama, Styx takes her somewhere new, his true lair.
He does. He takes her to that farmhouse south of the city, the one with the caves underneath. It's presented as a distinct contrast to the other places, like the slick nightclub or the isolated estate. This feels more grounded, maybe more permanent, more like a real home.
And he gives her a gift there.
Yes, a mating gift. It's described as a large, flawless ruby ring. And interestingly, Styx explicitly calls it a human tradition for mates.
A human tradition from the Anaso of vampires. That's
Yeah.
telling. How does Darcy react to that and to Styx himself at this point?
The sources suggest it hits home for her. She has a strong reaction to the ring. And she starts to see past the ruthless reputation. She sees Styx as caring, capable of warmth, not just the cold-hearted leader everyone thinks he is. And the mating bond itself, despite how suddenly it happened, seems to be creating a real sense of comfort for her. A feeling of belonging she's probably never had before. It's like this unexpected anchor in the middle of all this supernatural chaos.
So she's finding some semblance of stability, maybe? But the wider world isn't exactly peaceful, right? There are still other conflicts swirling around.
Oh, absolutely not peaceful. While Darcy's settling in, Styx is busy being the Anaso. The sources mention he's dealing with internal vampire politics disputes involving other clan chiefs like Uther, Victoria, and someone named D'Angelo, keeping his own house in order.
Right, standard leader stuff, even for vampires.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's that attack by another vampire chief, Desmond. What was that about?
Desmond attacks Styx's lair specifically to retrieve 2 of his own clansmen. Apparently, these 2 vampires were hiding out in some tunnels connected to the home of Abby, who is Shay's human stepdaughter, tying back to Viper's Circle.
Ah, okay, so it's an internal vampire power play spilling over.
Exactly. It leads to a direct battle between Styx and Desmond. Styx wins, reinforcing his authority as a Naso. And during the chaos of the attack, Levitt the Gargoyle actually steps up to protect Darcy, shifting into his stone form to shield her.
Levitt. That little gargoyle is proving quite loyal. It shows these bonds forming are real.
It does, but just when you think things might calm down, the sources introduce another thread, a hint of even bigger players on the scene.
Oh, with that.
There's this brief scene set at like a hotel reception. It involves several new characters. Someone named Caesar, who seems like a vampire, Anna, maybe human but connected to him, and Sybil, who's revealed to be a fairy.
Fairies too. Okay.
And they're talking about a mysterious group called the Commission, and also oracles, and these groups are apparently very interested in a potential member, and the implication is strong that they mean Darcy. They even mention spells being targeted at her.
Wait, so on top of the vampire king being mated to her and the werewolf king wanting her as his queen, there are these ancient, shadowy organizations, maybe even involving fairies and oracles, who've had her on their radar all along.
That's exactly what it seems like. It adds this whole other dimension. Suddenly, Darcy isn't just unique or caught between 2 factions. She might be a key player or pawn in a much larger cosmic game involving powers beyond just vampires and werewolves.
Wow, okay. This dive has been packed, absolutely packed with revelations. So let's try to distill this. What are the core takeaways, the crucial insights from digging into Darkness Everlasting? What really defines these demon societies and their dynamics?
Well, we've certainly got a clear picture of the vampire world, right? It's ancient, powerful, very structured with that hierarchy, the Anaso at the top, clan chiefs below. And their mating ritual is profound, eternal, sacred, not taken lightly. Their powers are significant, the healing, speed, scent, that influencing ability. But they have those classic, very specific weaknesses too, like sun and
Right.
stakes.
And the werewolves.
Right.
What do we learn defines them?
For the wares, that split is key. The born purebloods versus the bitten curs. Clear hierarchy there too, with their king and Naso. Their nature seems inherently tied to, well, violence and instinct, even though the purebloods strive for control. And that struggle with fertility. It's not just a side issue. It seems like a defining, almost existential challenge for them, driving major plot points. Lineage and finding the right mate are critical.
And the gargoyles are just...
Totally different. Unique physical nature, those abilities like turning to stone, creating portals, and distinct personalities like Levitt's bossiness mixed with loyalty. And maybe the biggest learning is about mixed heritage itself, through Darcy. It shows that hybrid traits exist: the healing, the non-aging. It makes someone incredibly hard to classify, even for other demons. And that ambiguity, that unique mix, makes them incredibly valuable or dangerous, sought after by multiple powerful groups.
And woven through all this are the characters themselves. These powerful leaders like Styx and Salvatore, they're navigating these complex rules. Sometimes they follow them rigidly, sometimes they defy them completely, but they're always driven by these deeply personal things: duty, obsession, maybe even love, or just figuring out who they are.
Absolutely. And then layered over absolutely everything are those tantalizing hints of the bigger picture. Organizations like the Commission, the Oracles, these mysterious forces operating in the background, watching, possibly manipulating things, and seeing individuals like Darcy not just as anomalies, but as potentially pivotal figures on a much larger stage we haven't even fully seen yet.
Wow. That really was quite a journey through this hidden world, wasn't it? From those secret demon nightclubs and ancient lairs hidden under farmhouses
Yeah.
to discovering unexpected powers and these incredibly tangled family histories. It's a lot.
It really is. We've seen how appearances can be totally deceiving. The seemingly normal human bartender turns out to be anything but. And these powerful ancient leaders, they're driven by some very deep vulnerabilities, very personal needs and desires.
Yeah. And we've definitely seen the tension between the different species play out. That old vampire-werewolf animosity is real. Plus the unique role creatures like gargoyles play. And like you said, those hints of even bigger, older forces pulling strings behind the scenes.
It definitely leaves you with a lot to chew on from these sources.
Absolutely it does. And here's a final thought for you, the listener, to maybe mull over as you go about your day. Something that really stands out from all this material we've covered. We've learned that, Darcy, right? With her human background mixed with these powerful, unclassifiable demon traits, she doesn't neatly fit into any single world described here. Not human, not fully vampire, maybe werewolf, but not really. Something else entirely, perhaps. She's intensely desired, even needed, by the absolute top leaders of both vampires and werewolves. And now, even these mysterious external groups, like the Commission, seem to see her as a potential game changer.
Which raises this really fundamental question about the world presented in these sources. In a reality that seems so rigidly defined by species, by bloodline, by ancient rules, what does it actually mean when someone comes along who embodies the traits, the potential of multiple powerful groups? Is she someone who could maybe bridge these hostile worlds? Or is she inevitably going to be caught in the middle, maybe even torn apart by the forces pulling at her?
Think about that. And thank you for joining us for this deep dive.